So as we begin to look ahead to the 2023 season, several teams stand out to me, and one such team is the USC Trojans. And USC piques my interest for several different reasons, but the reason that stands at the forefront is that in my opinion, 2023 is massive for Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans, and today we're going to break it down. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe that 2023 is huge for USC? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small, but they are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. And we're on a push to 20,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, before we can fully turn our attention to the 2023 season in front of us, I think it's important for us to take a quick look back at 2022. Because before the 2022 season started, and I have said this several times, I did a preview kind of trying to figure out where USC would be under Lincoln Riley in his first year. And they exceeded my expectations. I thought that would be a much improved team, but I did not realize they'd be one game away from playoff contention. And so that begs the question, what does 2023 offer for the USC Trojans? And the first reason why I think this is such a big year for USC and Lincoln Riley is the quarterback situation. If we look around the nation and if we look around the landscape of college football at teams that were close to playoff contention, not many of them return a starting quarterback. And in USC's case, not only do you have quarterback continuity, your quarterback continuity comes with Caleb Williams, the former Heisman Trophy winner. And if we really dissect Caleb Williams, he was a 5-star coming out of high school, a top prospect in the nation, committed to Oklahoma, played as a freshman for Lincoln Riley, and made tremendous strides from his freshman season to his sophomore season, and continued to grow from game one till the final game, which really piques my interest as to where he will end up in his development. If he continues growing through the course of this offseason and into his junior year, USC fans are going to be very, very excited. But even as it stands right now, this is a guy that's projected as not only the number one quarterback off the board in next year's draft if everything goes according to plan, but the number one player off the board in next year's draft. And when you break down the film, it's easy to understand why, especially with the strides he took from his freshman year, where everybody was privy to how gifted he was, to his sophomore year, where he started putting some of the fundamentals on display, and I'm really excited to see how the growth continues going into his junior year. But I think that's very important. You get a quarterback that has so much ability, and one thing we talk about when we talk about Caleb Williams is if you're a defensive coordinator, how do you draw up the game plan to stop him? Genuinely, this is a real question, and I'm interested in hearing from all of you in the comments, because this is something I think about constantly. If you're a defensive coordinator, are you going to try and contain him to the pocket and make him work from there, or are you going to blitz him? We know how gifted his arm is. He can hit every blade of grass on the football field, so trying to keep him in the pocket, you're asking a very talented quarterback to stay put, and you know he can beat you with his arm. The flip side of this equation is if you try and get pressure on Caleb Williams, he's a very athletic guy. And not only is he a very athletic quarterback, but he was one of a few quarterbacks in college football that had the ability to break the pocket and be just as dangerous as a passer on the run as he was stationary. What I mean when I say that is, if you're a defensive coordinator and you chose to blitz Caleb Williams, congratulations, now you've gotten him out of the pocket. That's step one. Step two is being disciplined. Now, you have to make sure all your safeties, all your defensive backs stay assigned to their man, stay assigned to their zone, and don't get greedy. Don't take a step up trying to account for the mobility of Caleb Williams, because the second you do, he's going to pop it right over your head. We saw him do it time and time again. So I think when we look at USC, returning Caleb Williams is huge for the Trojans, especially when we look at the Pac-12. First and foremost, and this will be the last point before we get to point number 2, I think the Pac-12 is going to be better than a lot of people anticipate, but specifically, I want to focus on Utah, because Oregon's going to be an improving team. Washington's going to be a lot of fun. For those of you that watch the channel a lot, you'll know how much fun I personally had watching Michael Penix Jr. play last year. But whenever we really take a deep dive into this and into the Pac-12, Utah was the team that beat USC, and a major factor for Utah is no longer with that roster. Yes, they return Can Rising, which is huge. Yes, it's a phenomenally coached coach team, as I have always stated with Utah, but Dalton Kincaid is no longer there, and he was the leading pass catcher and the leading receiver for the Utah Utes at the tight end position. And one thing we talk about consistently on the channel, the mismatches tight ends can generate. So the biggest reason why I think this year is so big is this is Caleb Williams' final year if everything goes right. And certainly Lincoln Riley's ability to work with quarterbacks is not in the question. That's not my contention here. But we do know Caleb Williams is a special quarterback talent. Malachi Nelson is a 5-star prospect, very, very gifted. The future is very bright for him. Miller Moss is a guy that one of the USC faithful actually commented on the last live stream and said they thought that I had overlooked him, and I think that's very fair. I don't believe I had made any mention of Miller Moss, and he is a very gifted quarterback, so that one is absolutely on me. But Caleb Williams is as gifted as they come. He is an automatic first-round pick and has been talked about as such since his freshman year. So being able to replace him, though you feel good because you have Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams is still a special, special talent. But that gets me into point number 2. And that's the fact of this USC defense. The USC defense must improve. No one in their right mind is questioning what USC's offense is going to look like in 2023. And for USC fans, I'm sorry, that's a phrase you've heard me say several times, and I will say it one last time. But in order to understand why I think this year is so significant for USC's defense, I think we need to do a little bit of a historical dive into Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator for the Trojans. And in order to do that, we have to go back to 2015, whenever he first got his opportunity as a defensive coordinator with Washington State. And that defense he inherited ranked 74th in the nation. The next year in 2016, they ranked 50th in the nation before that 2017 season where they finished around that same area, number 50 in the nation. But it is important to note that in that 2017 season, multiple areas of that defense had taken tremendous strides forward. There was notable growth in the defense, though the final ranking didn't reflect it. If we really start going into the weeds, looking at the efficiency of some of the areas of that defense, there was a statistical improvement. But then this gets us into one of the more interesting cases within Alex Grinch's career, and that's the Ohio State stint. Because in 2018, he took the Ohio State opportunity. And important to note that in 2017, Ohio State had a top 15 defense manned by Greg Schiano. And in 2018, Greg Schiano and Alex Grinch were working as co-defensive coordinators, and it did not work in the least. That 2018 Ohio State defense went from being ranked in the top 15 in 2017 to being outside the top 50 in 2018. What's worse is that in 2019, after both Schiano and Alex Grinch were no longer on roster, they went back to being a top 10 defense, meaning there was a problem, and once they got rid of the two defensive signal callers, that problem seemed to correct itself, which gets us into the Oklahoma years. Because in 2019, Alex Grinch inherited the defense for the Oklahoma Sooners, and this was not a defense that had a lot going for it. They were ranked 64th in the nation when he took them over. Now, the next year in 2020, Oklahoma fans were over the moon when the year ended because the defense had taken legitimate strides forward. And there was an all-time excitement around Norman at the possibilities at what could be on the horizon, as that defense, when Alex Grinch inherited, was outside the top 60. After his second year, this was a defense that was inside the top 30. The strides were being shown. But then that gets us into the last year with Oklahoma, where all of those strides just dissipated, absolutely crumbled, and the defense went to being ranked outside the top 60 once again, and then he goes to USC. And in fairness, for his first season at USC, he wasn't given a great defense to work with. He wasn't given a talent-wrench defense to work with. So I can't hold much against him in year one at USC whenever this wasn't a defense that had opportunity to really be a fervent, aggressive, dangerous defense. But this team has done a lot of good work in the transfer portal. If we look at the defensive additions they've made out the transfer portal, you're talking Traquan Fegans, the defensive back that transferred from Alabama to USC. Important to note that Traquan Fegans had a younger brother who was a 5-star prospect who committed to USC when Traquan Fegans made that move. On top of that, you have Bear Alexander, the former 5-star defensive lineman. You have Anthony Lucas, a very highly touted blue-chip defensive lineman out the state of Arizona who committed to Texas A&M out of high school, but now finds his way closer to home. After that, you have Jack Sullivan, defensive lineman. You have Mason Cobb, the linebacker from Oklahoma State, who did a lot of positive work for Oklahoma State, who transfers to USC. You have Christian Wallace, the cornerback, transferring from Arizona to USC. You have Kyan Bars, and then finally you have Jamil Muhammad. So this is a staff that's paid attention to their needs on the defensive side of the football and has tried to address them, and I'm really interested to see how this defense is going to progress in 2023. Because if the defense takes strides forward, this USC offense is going to be very dangerous. And though I don't question any part of the USC offense, I must admit I am very excited to see how they replicate Travis Dye's production for them, though that being said, it's a very gifted running back room. There is no doubt about that. But I think when we look at this, reason number 2 why this is such a big year, what's the defense going to do? Is there going to be a statistical improvement in the defense? And the reason why that's so big this year, the reason why point 1 and point 2 are so important is because of point 3. This is the last year for USC in the Pac-12 before they make the move to the Big Ten, where the style of football is much different, where someone like Alex Grinch did not mesh with the style there. So this is a big year for Alex Grinch, because if USC does not make it to the college football playoffs, I think a lot of questions are going to turn to Alex Grinch, because Lincoln Riley's offense has been a top-tier offense, and if we even really start asking where the offenses for Alex Grinch have ranked, well, let's start with that 2018 season for Ohio State, where the defense ranked outside the top 50 in the nation, but the offense was a top 10 offense. In 2019 with Oklahoma, where the defense was outside the top 50, the offense was 6th. 2020, defense inside the top 30, offense is 6th. 2021, the defense was outside the top 60 in the nation. The offense, once again, was a top 10 unit. So it's going to be interesting how these styles finally mesh, and this is a big year. What better year for Alex Grinch to prove to everybody, no, this defense can work, than the year you're about to leave the Pac-12. The last year you have Caleb Williams as the quarterback, and the year before you go to the Big Ten. If there was ever a year for Alex Grinch to make it work, this is the year. And if it doesn't come together, I don't know that he'll make the move to the Big Ten with the USC Trojans. So when we look at this holistically, this is a massive year for USC. If they make it to the college football playoffs, one would imagine that the quality of recruiting will increase, which is scary because USC is already recruiting very well. They're hitting the transfer portal very well. But if they make it to the college football playoffs, all these prospects and their belief in USC long-term, it's going to exponentially increase, and it's going to make it that much easier for them to go to a defensive lineman, to go to a linebacker and say, hey, come here. You've seen we were just in the college football playoffs. You know what we're building. You're the catalyst. You know what we're going to do on offense. You come here, be the catalyst that propels us to a national championship, and that will be a very tough pitch to say no to. But that's exactly why this year is so key, because if it all doesn't come together, I don't know what better opportunity the Trojans have than 2023 to really put their stamp on the program they want to become. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. This is such an interesting topic. It's one we'll probably talk about more in the live stream this evening. But when you look at this, all the stars are adding up for USC. You return Caleb Williams. Though Utah is going to be a very solid team, though I think the Pac-12 is going to be an improved conference, Oregon's going to be good, Washington's going to be good. Whenever we look, the one team that beat USC was Utah, and their leading receiver is no longer a part of that team, who just so happened to be their tight end, who did so much for the Utes. On top of that, this is a big year for Alex Grinch. His defenses have been all over the place. There's been a lot of questions asked, and this is a perfect year for you to answer those questions right before a massive move is on the horizon. A move where you want to be as prepared and ready as possible, and part of being prepared and ready is being able to recruit the right type of athlete. What better way to be able to do that than to be able to absolutely show them tangibly USC has arrived. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.